You are a newborn baby, and you have just arrived in the world. It is 40,000 years ago, somewhere warm, beside a small fire. And here is the strange part about you. You are completely, utterly useless. You cannot walk. You cannot crawl. You cannot even hold up your own wobbly head. A baby deer can stand and run within an hour of being born. You will need a whole year just to take a few shaky steps. You are the most helpless newborn of any creature on the planet. And yet, in a world of predators, hunger and cold, these people kept you alive. There is no mother animal on Earth with a tougher job than yours. And somehow, she was not doing it all alone. So how on earth did they actually do it? So here is the question that runs deeper than it looks. How did ancient humans raise babies in the wild, with no hospitals and no formula? Think about what that really means for a moment. No doctor when a fever spiked in the middle of the night. No pharmacy, no clean bottles, no diapers, no cribs. Just people, and the open land, and a fragile little life to protect. And make no mistake, these were brutally hard times. For most of human history, a shocking number of children never grew up. In some groups, nearly half of all children died before reaching adulthood. So raising a baby was not a gentle little hobby. It was a life or death project, repeated in every single generation. And yet, here you are today, reading these very words, which means your ancestors somehow cracked this problem again and again. An unbroken chain of survivors stretches back behind every person alive. And the way they pulled it off is not what you would guess. Because it was never just one exhausted mother, alone with her baby. It was a whole system built over hundreds of thousands of years. It was the breast being used as a clock. It was fathers who carried, and grandmothers who changed everything. And it ends with a twist that might explain why our species is so unusually kind. Each layer on its own is surprising. Together, they quietly rewrite what a family even is. Stay with me, because the ending is easily the best part. There are 7 layers here. Let's go. Here is what nobody tells you about human babies. Compared to almost every other animal, we are born far too early. A baby chimpanzee can cling to its mother's fur from the very first day. A baby horse is up and walking around within an hour or two. But a human baby arrives soft, floppy, and completely dependent. Scientists actually have a name for this odd state. They call us secondarily altricial. It is a fancy way of saying we are born unfinished. And there is a very good reason for it, hidden inside your own body. To walk upright on 2 legs, the human hip had to become narrow. But at the very same time, the human brain was ballooning in size. So you have a big-headed baby trying to fit through a narrow opening. Something had to give, and what gave was time in the womb. Human babies are pushed out early, while they are still small enough to be born safely. Your brain does a huge amount of its growing after birth, not before. Some scientists call those first few months the 4th trimester. It is as if the pregnancy is not really finished at the moment of birth. It simply continues out in the open air. So an ancient mother was not handed a sturdy little survivor. She was handed a warm, helpless bundle that needed everything done for it. And that one fact quietly shaped absolutely everything else. Every custom, every habit, every helper grew out of that helplessness. A baby this fragile could not be raised in a careless way. Think about how strange that really is for a second. We are the clever, dominant animal, the one that took over the whole planet. And we begin life as the single most useless newborn in the animal kingdom. Our greatest strength and our greatest weakness are bolted together. It demanded a level of care that almost no other animal provides. So the very first rule of survival was beautifully simple. You almost never put the baby down. In many hunter-gatherer groups, babies are carried nearly all the time. Among the Kung people of the Kalahari, a baby rides in a soft sling. It sits on the mother's hip or back, against her bare skin, all day. The baby feels her warmth, her heartbeat, and every single step she takes. And when that baby is hungry, it does not have to wait at all. Researchers found that Kung mothers nursed on demand, roughly every 13 minutes. Every 13 minutes, all day long, in tiny little feeds. That is not a scheduled bottle a few times a day. That is a near constant trickle of milk, warmth, and contact. At night, the baby sleeps right beside the mother, not alone in a separate room. It can reach the breast and feed itself while she barely even wakes. So the baby is almost never alone. It is almost never cold and almost never truly hungry. And this constant closeness did far more than just comfort the child. It kept the baby calm and quiet, which mattered enormously in the wild. A crying baby can draw a predator or scare away the animals being hunted. A calm, carried, well-fed baby is simply a safer baby. So being held all day was not spoiling the child. There is even a name for this style of parenting today. People sometimes call it carrying culture or high-contact care. But for our ancestors, it was never really a parenting choice. It was simply the only way a fragile baby got through the day. It was one of the oldest survival tools we have. But all that constant nursing was hiding a secret superpower. It quietly worked as a form of birth control. When a mother nurses very often, her body holds off on another pregnancy. It is a natural pause, driven by the frequent nursing itself. So in these groups, babies tended to be born surprisingly far apart. The average gap between children was around 3 to 4 years. Compare that to how fast many animals breed, and it is remarkable. Ancient mothers were usually not having a new baby every single year. And that wide spacing was absolutely not an accident. It was survival math written directly into the body. A helpless human baby needs years of intense hands-on care. If you have a new baby every year, you simply cannot manage. You cannot carry them all, or feed them all, or protect them all. By spacing the births out, each child got the years it truly needed. The older one could walk and talk before the next one arrived. So the breast was never just a source of food. It was also a clock, quietly setting the rhythm of the whole family. It made sure every baby got its own proper turn. And in a fragile world, taking turns is what kept the line alive. There is something almost elegant about the way this worked. The mother did not need a calendar or a rule to follow. Her own baby, by nursing so often, quietly spaced out the next one. The child in her arms was protecting the child not yet born. One child at a time, carefully, was the winning strategy. Now, here is where the myth of the lonely mother completely falls apart. We love to picture one heroic mother doing every bit of it alone. But that is almost never how ancient humans actually raised their children. Humans are what scientists call cooperative breeders. It means the whole group pitches in to raise each child. And the evidence from living hunter-gatherers is genuinely stunning. Among the Ewe people of the Congo rainforest, a newborn is shared from day one. In the first weeks of life, an Ewe baby is held by many different people. Aunts, older girls, grandmothers, cousins, and friends all take a turn. And here's the part that really surprises people. Some of those other women will even breastfeed the baby themselves. Let that sink in for a second. The baby is not fed by its own mother alone. It is nursed by a small circle of women who quietly share the load. Anthropologists have a special word for all these helpers. They call them alloparents, which simply means other parents. And alloparents show up in human groups all over the world. Older siblings carry the toddlers around on their hips. Grandmothers dig for food to feed the smallest ones. Meanwhile, the mother gets to rest and eat and slowly recover, because a mother with helpers can raise a child that a lone mother never could. So an ancient baby did not have just one caregiver. It had a whole living web of them. Studies of these groups reveal something striking in the numbers. A baby with more willing helpers is a baby far more likely to survive. Extra hands mean more food, more rest, and more eyes watching for danger. The lone mother picture is not just sad, it is almost unworkable. And that web is the real reason these fragile babies survived at all. And these helpers were very much not only women. We often assume ancient fathers were off hunting, distant, and uninvolved. But some of the most hands-on fathers on Earth live in forager groups today. Among the AK people of Central Africa, fathers stay astonishingly close to their babies. Studies found that an AK father is within arm's reach of his infant nearly half the day. Nearly half of the time, right there, ready to help. He holds the baby, soothes it, and even offers his own chest to calm it. AK men treat caring for their children as a core part of being a good man. It is not brushed aside as only women's work. So the image of the cold, absent Stone Age father may be quite wrong. In many groups, fathers were deeply woven into the daily care of babies. And here is a subtle detail that the research turned up. When a grandmother was around, fathers tended to hold the baby a little less. When she was not around, the fathers stepped up and held the baby more. In other words, the whole family quietly flexed to fit the moment. Whoever happened to be free simply leaned in and helped. The baby was always covered because the group filled every gap. And that flexibility, more than any single hero, is what kept babies alive. And children clearly noticed who kept showing up for them. A baby that is held, rocked, and fed by many people learns to trust many people. That early web of care may shape how we bond for the rest of our lives. Care, it turns out, was always a group project. It was teamwork, running quietly under everything else. Which brings us to the quiet hero of this entire story, the grandmother. Here is a genuinely strange fact about human beings. In most animals, females can have babies until nearly the end of their lives. But human women often live for decades after they stop having children. That long life after childbearing is deeply unusual in nature. And scientists think it exists for a very good reason. There is a famous idea called the grandmother hypothesis. It says older women boosted their families by helping, not by having more babies. A strong grandmother could dig up roots and tubers all day long. She could feed her grandchildren while their mother was busy or nursing a newborn. That extra food meant more of those grandchildren survived. And a mother with her own mother nearby could space her children a little closer. So grandmothers were never spare parts, sitting uselessly by the fire. They were a food supply, a second pair of hands, and a living library of knowledge. They knew which plants healed, which were poison, and where the water hid. Some scientists even argue grandmothers helped stretch out the human lifespan itself. The longer a helpful grandmother lived, the more of her family survived. And those survivors carried her long life genes forward. So the humble grandmother may be one of the great secret engines of our evolution. There is a haunting flip side to this idea as well. A group that kept its elders alive also kept its knowledge alive. When a drought or a hard winter struck, old memory often saved everyone. A grandmother who remembered the last famine knew exactly what to do. Her wrinkles were not weakness. They were a survival superpower. Still, let's not pretend for a moment that any of this was easy. Growing up in the wild was genuinely, constantly dangerous. Babies faced illness, injury, hunger, and cold with no medicine to fall back on. And when it was time to move a baby, off the breast, there was no jar of baby food. So mothers and helpers would chew food soft in their own mouths first. Then they passed that soft, mashed food straight to the child. It sounds strange to us, but it was gentle, safe, and it worked. Children were weaned slowly onto the very same foods the adults ate. And once they could toddle, kids spent their days in mixed-age playgroups. The little ones learned by copying the bigger children, not from formal lessons. They played at digging, at tracking, at building, and at gathering. Their play was really just practice for the whole job of staying alive. But through all of it, the shadow of loss was always close by. Many children, despite everything, still did not make it to adulthood. Every single survivor was the result of enormous shared effort. Raising a child in that world was a genuine triumph every time. It was never, ever guaranteed. And grief, we should remember, is not some modern invention. These were parents who loved their children fiercely, exactly as we do. When a child was lost, the entire camp felt the wound. So every child raised to adulthood carried the hope of many hearts. It was earned day by day by a whole lot of people. Now, let's be honest about how we actually know all of this. We cannot travel back in time and watch an ancient mother nurse her child. Soft things like slings, milk, and daily habits leave almost no trace in the ground. So a great deal of this comes from studying hunter-gatherers who still live this way. Groups like the Kung, the Aka, the Ife, and the Hadza. But we have to be genuinely careful here. These are modern people, with their own long history, not living fossils. They are not frozen snapshots of the Stone Age. So we cannot just paste their exact lives onto our distant ancestors. What makes the case strong is how often the same patterns appear. Constant carrying, long nursing, and shared care show up again and again. They appear across very different peoples, on different continents. When that many separate groups land on the same solution, it is a powerful clue. It suggests we are seeing something very deep and very old. We can also read tiny clues straight from ancient bones and teeth. The chemistry locked in a child's tooth can hint at when they stopped nursing. So the picture is not built on pure guesswork. It is careful detective work, coming from many different angles at once. Not a certainty, but a well-lit, well-worn path back into our past. So here is the last thing, the part I saved for the very end. And it might quietly change how you see your own species. We started with what looked like a problem. Human babies are born far too soon and far too helpless. On the surface, that looks like a terrible design flaw, a real weakness compared to a foal that runs at birth. But flip it around for just a second. Because that helplessness may be the single most important thing about us. No lone mother could raise such a needy baby entirely by herself. It was simply too much work for any one person to carry. So our ancestors had no choice but to share the load. Grandmothers, fathers, aunts, and older children all had to pitch in. And to share care like that, you are forced to cooperate. You have to read each other and trust and take turns. You have to understand what another person is feeling and needing. Some scientists think this is exactly where our deep social skills were born. That raising helpless babies together is what made us so cooperative and kind. We may not have become clever first and then started helping each other. We may have become clever because we already had to help each other. The needy human baby did not just need a village. The needy human baby may have quietly built one. And that village, in the end, may have built us. It is a strange and rather beautiful thought to sit with. Our kindness may be the long echo of 1,000 shared cradles. Every time you comfort someone, you are using a very old tool. A tool first sharpened around ancient fires over helpless little babies. We became human, not in spite of our helpless babies, but because of them. So come back to that tiny newborn beside the fire 40,000 years ago. Soft, helpless, and utterly dependent on the people gathered around it. It could not walk or speak or survive a single day on its own. And that was never a mistake in the design. That baby was held by its mother and its father and its grandmother. It was carried by cousins, fed by aunts, and watched by the whole group. Every one of us alive today is descended from a baby exactly like that, raised by many hands, in a world with no safety net at all. You were never built to be raised by just one person. You were built from the very start to be raised by a village. The next time you see a parent struggling with a newborn, remember this: they were never meant to do it entirely on their own. No human parent ever really was. And somewhere, very long ago, that village raised us all. If this made you think of the people who raised you, go tell them,